Welcome to the See Me, Be Me podcast. I'm Nile Henry.
And I'm Blair Henry.
And we're two brothers who set out on a mission to make motorsport and STEM careers more diverse, affordable, and inclusive. We are the founders of the Blair Project.
This podcast series delves into the minds of inspirational individuals who come from ordinary and often humble backgrounds, but through their belief, dogged determination, and never give up attitude, have managed to overcome academic, social, or mental challenges to achieve their dream careers.
Our guests will share their life lessons that you too can apply to your own. We hope their stories will inspire you to go further, aim higher, and accept nothing less than you deserve. Your ambition, your purpose is all within, and we're here to help you unlock it. The planet of possibilities are endless.
You know who made it.
Hello and welcome to the See Me, Be Me podcast. Today we are joined by Amer Gaffar, who is a director at the Manchester Fuel Cell Innovation Centre, which is a new £4 million net zero research and development centre. And Amer we've known him for a very long time, sustainability professional, an absolute legend. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Amer.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you for having me on. I think it's a really, really good time for sustainability and the sector. So I'm really, really looking forward to this podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. So Amer, first thing, Manchester Fuel Cell Innovation Centre. Tell us the background, how it got started, and a little bit about the purpose of it.
Okay. So I've been involved in sustainability net zero related projects for around 23 years. So wind, solar, and then I was a consultant for multiple years in going into organizations that had a plan around sustainability. So that might have been a building plan. So if you take the context of Manchester Met, they were spending lots of money on new buildings. And so I was brought in as a consultant to look at those buildings and uplift things that were more sustainable. So that's like LED lighting, combined heat and power systems. And I tried to install a hydrogen fuel cell into one of the university campus buildings. And everything I did previously had to have a certain payback period, because for me, many, many years, sustainability only made sense, or only people who were doing it were the ones who really believed in it, or it still had to make some level of commercial sense. When I tried to put the hydrogen fuel cell in, it didn't make any commercial sense because the expense of it was so high. But what it did do is it gave me the idea of what could really drive the agenda for technology like hydrogen fuel cells in a region like Greater Manchester. So what we effectively did is I put together an idea to create a hydrogen partnership, which was a new partnership which the city region hadn't seen before. So it was the university leading it with Greater Manchester Combined Authority, Manchester Airport, Transport for Greater Manchester, some smaller businesses and some larger businesses with a vested interest in seeing where this technology could go. We set up 4 key areas: energy, transport, research and skills. Those were the 4 key sort of milestones that we had to sort of deliver to. So if you take research, the idea was then born for what was required for the city region. And that was that we didn't have an R&D facility that completely focused on developing this technology and supporting supply chain businesses. So there was effectively where the start of the idea for the Fuel Cell Innovation Centre was created. And then you can't just build a centre like this without having the academic base to sort of back up the ideas that you want to develop with these businesses. So what we did then is we looked across the university spectrum and saw there was a brilliant expertise in surface engineering, brilliant expertise in smart energy systems, some brilliant expertise in around electrochemistry. There was some voids, which when you put together a business case, it was we needed investment into a capital facility, but we also needed investment into people as well. So when the idea was then put towards the combined authority and to kind of create that partnership, everyone really, really supported the idea. And when the right funding call came around, which was the European Regional Development Fund, which was about increasing the science asset base of Greater Manchester, we then put forward a proposal to create this facility, and we were successful in the award. Then a business case went to the university leadership team. They approved it, and we kind of got on with the journey, which it wasn't an instant journey because the spatial requirement for a facility like this is quite tough. So we wanted to align it to other areas of research, and the area that was allocated was the 5th floor of a tower block in the centre of Manchester, and you're building a hydrogen lab. So it took about 18 months, I'd say, to get from award through to the actual facility being built. And then there was still reservations by the fact that there was a complete lack of standards for certain things. And when you're talking about gases, you have to over-engineer a lab of that nature. And it was, but it has been built, and it's supported over 100 plus businesses who were at various different degrees of their sort of supply chain opportunity. That officially all happened in 2018. But since then, we've, alongside that, recognized that it's not just about, academic research. It's about research and development with businesses. It's the fact that there was an emerging policy area for hydrogen in the UK. And it's not just the UK. This is now a global endeavor. So 3 years later, we're now in a position, or 3 years later, the UK hydrogen strategy came out. That really sort of put the afterburners on what we were doing, because we have like an archetype, a roadmap to follow, and that give the assurance to businesses and actually for people to think, I want a career in this sector. And if I'm honest, out of the 23 years, for the first 10, it was my job. I didn't even, it's not about sustainability. Yeah, I talk about sustainability, but let's be honest, did I actually believe in sustainability? No, I drove a sports car. That's the honest to God truth. And I was just like, yeah, this is great. It's a job. When I got to the university, I think my mindset started to change, because you saw, thousands of students wandering around. You meet people who are like-minded. We met, and, it's the fact that I think you can learn something off everyone. We are really, really looking to sort of push the agenda for net zero and then find hydrogen's role within that. And if you look at, the broad-based brush, which is hydrogen, the market's huge. So if you look at it, it's not just about talking about a gas, it's about doing the stuff we do, which is fuel cells, electrolyzers. But then other institutions or other R&D facilities are looking at hydrogen pipelines, they're looking at storage of hydrogen, they're looking at multiple different areas. And that value chain suddenly gets a lot larger. So then what we also did is look at the ambition around skills. So we set up one of the world's first targeted programs of hydrogen education, but for school children. That is now delivered in 10 countries. There was over 600 teachers that were involved in the development of it. How can you expect teachers to teach about hydrogen if they're not talking about hydrogen? Again, that's a broader sort of ambition around net zero. How can you expect people to understand what their role in a net zero economy is if they don't understand what net zero is and what the idea of a net zero is? Because it's about different disciplines. So if you take a business as a core business, an idea of businesses that we both probably work with, we all work with, you've got CEO, they sign off on a net zero strategy. Do they really know what they're signing off on? So how do you deliver a net zero strategy for your business? You've then got a finance director that is basically signing the checks for the net zero ambitions of a business. Do they know what net zero is? You layer that down to each and every single business function. And when I look at it, the ones that are actively sort of looking at it is dedicated sustainability teams or it's legal compliance teams.
Yeah.
Procurement teams are starting to look into this, because when they have to report on emissions, scope 1 and 2 is relatively easy. Scope 3 makes this serious playtime, because then it's about, where do you buy your goods and services from? Local supply chains. It's all about creating those local supply chains. Take an energy vector like hydrogen. The International Energy Agency, they're claiming that from the research they've done, 75% of all hydrogen projects will be produced and used locally, whereas 25% is about exporting. So you need to create those local supply chains. Then from a combined authorities perspective, their ambition is around, we have to hit 2038 net zero. Hydrogen now is going to play a role, because that's what the plans have played a role in. We are one of the only city regions across the UK that have a dedicated and approved hydrogen and fuel cell strategy. That's done through a national lens. So that's something I wrote, which kind of looked at the national ambition and then created a local dimension to that national ambition, saying, what strengths do we already have? Well, we've got this hydrogen partnership, which has existed for over 10 years. We've now got this dedicated R&D facility. We've got these 100 plus businesses that are in and around the region that have got some involvement in hydrogen. And obviously, the Blair Project was one of them. Yeah. And then understanding how these businesses can feature into a potential national program, because then it suddenly gets a bit every sort of project makes this whole piece a larger puzzle, because you need finance mechanisms to deliver these projects. They're going to be costly projects. You need to understand where your expertise would lie. So I'm the director of a research center, but I'm not an academic. Yeah. The only reason why I'm a director of an R&D facility like this is because it's about businesses. It's about supporting business need. I'm a sustainability expert. I call myself one of them because I've done it for 23 years. Did I have a clue I wanted to come into this sector? No. My first, this is giving away my age now, but I'm 3 years off 50. So when I first got involved in the work,
you look good, buddy.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I think it's getting involved in sustainability. I got involved in it completely by accident, but I think that's all right, because even now, 2023, people are still getting involved into the areas of work that they get involved in, either by accident or just for the fact that they've landed a job that is a secure job. But I think the interest in sustainability has never been higher. Now, understanding what role you could do within, I think we shouldn't just talk about hydrogen. We should be talking about net zero as our end game. That's what ultimately we want to do. We've talked about sustainability for 20 plus years. Last 3, 4, 5 years, we've started to focus in on net zero. We get announcements, you take the government announcement that they're not saying we're canning net zero, or all they've said is we're going back to a date that was already agreed by the previous prime minister, and the way it's politics. You can't expect businesses to stop their journey on net zero, because it's a long road to deliver net zero. It's an expensive road, but it's also a road which is filled with the biggest amount of opportunity, the largest opportunity that this country has probably seen since the Industrial Revolution, because it is that big. Because you talk about transport, energy, those are two of the biggest markets in the world. That's what net zero has got to affect. You've got to talk about buildings. You've got to talk about skills. We talk about 95+% of all renewable energy projects that are in planning, and I'm specifically talking, say, some around hydrogen. What happens when they come out of planning? Who's going to deliver them? So you need to think, we've got an R&D facility, we've got a policy framework that is suitable for our region. Then we've got to really hone down on the skills agenda. And it's not just about the university sector, it's about bringing that supply chain together. That's an ambition which is probably bigger than a net zero ambition, because with 2023, we've still got a problem with retrofit skills. We've still got a problem with digital skills. We have not solved any skills challenge. There is a looming one around net zero, but there's a looming one. There's always a looming one. What we need to do is bring together that supply chain, and that's ask the businesses what type of skills they want to recruit. And they might not know. That's okay. So then you work with them to then bring together the education sector, which includes specialists, training providers. The type of training that you guys do is phenomenal. And it should be provided to everyone to understand where they can go to get support. If you're interested in a university undergraduate career, and even for me, it was challenging. My eldest son's just gone to university, and he didn't want to do anything to do with hydrogen. I think I put him off. But he wanted to do something around economics. But that's all right, because sustainable finance is going to be huge. And when you start breaking up the skills that are required to deliver net zero, we should be talking about every single job is a green job. There's no getting away from it, because whether it's STEM-based skills, because STEM-based subjects are quite well covered. What we think we probably need to do is probably just enhance them to look at them with a lens that is around sustainability and net zero. So if I pick on a course, and I tend to pick on this course quite a lot, electrical engineering, it hasn't changed in shape or form for many years, whichever institution you look at it as. It almost needs to be now electrical engineering with a net zero lens, because electricity, no matter how you produce it, it's just flow of electrons. It's understanding which technology vectors are going to make a real play towards net zero. Because unless someone invents something that is astronomically brilliant, we kind of know 80, 90% of the technologies that are going to get us to net zero. If there's investment there, we can deliver net zero very quickly, because it always boils down to investment. But that's investment in people as well. And so the range of projects that I'm involved in is, one, an R&D center. There's a policy sort of framework around hydrogen and the role for a city region like Greater Manchester. That policy was written to create a vision. That vision says, what do we want a hydrogen Greater Manchester to look like? Well, we want a big focal hydrogen facility in the middle. So a couple of years ago, we partnered with a company called Carlton Power, who have put together a proposition to create UK's largest green hydrogen scheme. And we're an academic partner in that, to look at two things: to look at the supply chain of businesses that could benefit from a big infrastructure project like that, but equally look at the ambition around skills. At the moment, nothing's been built. So we're talking about a flat piece of land, but what we are talking about is a flat piece of land with planning permission, with a grid connection, with an investor behind it, with an opportunity that is now being created, that if we're being really ambitious, we could make Manchester the home for the AstraZeneca for hydrogen technologies somewhere around Trafford. Even our ambition as a university is that we're at a bottleneck with the technology readiness level that we work towards. So our recently awarded Innovation Accelerator, which, you guys have got one, I think that needs to work in synergy. Yeah. Ours is about research and development with businesses who are large, who can sort of help with accelerating the ambition of UK in developing these technologies. It's then about capacity building, but equally it's about feeding into what a national hydrogen program could look like. And that's going to involve many, many minds and many, many opportunities. And then there's the inclusion of the skills aspect. Always include the skills aspect, because the schools program's great, but it stops at 18. The net zero skills work we're doing is about understanding what type of skills people will need to invest in between now and 2030, which is, I think, 2040, which is an industrial clusters date. You've got 2030, you've got 2038, you've got 2050. Already, we could be confused sat here, given the fact that there's so many dates to address to. But we relatively know what we're talking about. What about all of the people that don't? If anything, what hinders their progress on sustainability, net zero, hydrogen, or wherever it is the fact that we like to layer things up in confusion. We look at the spate of policies that exist around net zero and sustainability. There's 15, 20, each with their own portfolio and archetypes of roadmaps that they need to deliver. Yeah. There isn't many programs, though. And I think that's what the UK is missing. It's missing dedicated programs that will deliver for businesses, for academic researchers, for regions that have these ambitious targets, and equally for the opportunity that we're all trying to create, because it's not just about us, clearly, is it? You learn something from the children that visit the centre, or people that you meet. When we first met, I learned loads from you. Every time I meet you, I learn something new from you, because that's how we progress in my mind. Yeah. I don't know everything, and I clearly don't know everything, because there's certain skill sets that I just don't have. The best skill set I probably do have is I probably know how to talk to people. And that's the top of the list. Whether you've got a PhD, whether I think the ability to talk to people and understand what their problem is, because once you know someone's problems or someone's concerns, you can help them. And if you don't, we're just going to go round and round in circles and think, what have I actually achieved? So understanding that research has to play a role, policy has to play a role, businesses are critical to all this agenda, government is critical to this agenda, but all you're looking for from government really is two things. It's the commitment that this is something that you're going to back, because it gives the assurity to the businesses like yourselves that this is an area that we should be vested into, but it equally gives the assurance to those thousands and I'd say hundreds of thousands of people that are looking for career options. And I think that's really the next phase for this. It's we've got an idea of how to deliver net zero. We've got an idea of where the investment needs to go. We just need to ensure that we're not in a place where we've got all these big infrastructure projects announced and we're then scrambling around trying to find people to deliver them, because net zero isn't just a challenge for the UK, it isn't just a challenge for Greater Manchester, it's a challenge globally. So even just in hydrogen terms, we've got a dedicated UK hydrogen strategy. There's 52 other countries with a dedicated hydrogen strategy. They're either developed as a new strategy or many countries reissue them with a new and probably more substantial commitment. The recent two examples around that is Japan. There's a big focus. We are doing a lot of work with Japan. There's a big delegation going out later in the year to Japan, but there's a big pillar around net zero. I'm interested in that pillar. I wouldn't say it selfishly, actually it's the right way to do it, is because Japan have made a commitment over the next 15 years to invest $107 billion in the hydrogen supply chain. Now that allows you to break it down from components. So I would suggest you want to make a play in any other country's ambitions, and a lot of UK businesses are. So if you take, a success story like ITM Power, which has been involved in the hydrogen space for many, many years, they've just opened their German base today. They've got a base in the UK, in Sheffield. They've got ambitions to open one in the US. There's ambitions around Australia, because as each and every single country accelerates their journey to net zero and they start investing in these technologies, the opportunities are there. So I don't think and that's equally from a mindset of whether you're a graduate or you're someone who's looking for employment, is there anything wrong in going where the work is or who's going to look after you the most, or where the best opportunity? So if I'm a recent graduate and I've got the skill set, but there isn't the range of projects available for me here, but there are somewhere else in the world, I'd go there. But I think this is about ensuring that we've got a pipeline of skills to deliver the UK's ambitions around net zero. And yes, hydrogen has to play a key role within that. And I think then understanding, bringing it back to, has my role changed over the last 12? My role changes each day. My role wasn't about writing policies. It wasn't around designing innovation programs. It wasn't about, I was brought in for a 3-month contract to look at installing infrastructure or low carbon infrastructure into university campus. That's what gave me the idea and the impetus to sort of develop a partnership, because I think there is clear, and I still believe the power of a partnership, if it's the right partnership, is phenomenal, because it's taken 10 years, but we've got £4 million asset. We've got lots of brilliant people who are academics and professional services working within the Fuel Cell Centre. The centre is recognised nationally, it's recognised internationally. We've got partnerships in Japan, we've got partnerships in India, we've got partnerships in China, we've got partnerships in the US, we've got partnerships pretty much everywhere. And they are not just based around the core area of research, they're based around education, they're based around understanding that, are we seen as a leading light in this space? I'd like to think so. And I'd like to say I've played quite a key role in that. But I think, is the job done? No, because the next big thing is really, how do you create a space that features in national plans? And what I mean by that specifically is, we've got great local relationships, we've got very good regional base, but we want to feature in the national ambition for what Hydrogen UK looks like. Yeah. We want to be a clear leader in the expertise that we've got in the region. And that includes, our electrochemical expertise, equally includes your edtech expertise. The fact that you're delivering hydrogen learning in the way you're delivering it is brilliant, because many learners don't want to learn sat in a classroom or sat in a lecture theatre. Yeah. There's got to be different ways. And even the schools program, when we did that, how do you excite a 13 to 18-year-old about hydrogen? It's boring gas. you're trying to promote a boring gas, and you have to talk about it in a way that. And I think what probably helped me is the fact that I've got teenage kids, because communicating with them generally was, you have to be trying to be cool, but and they're probably my worst critics. What you wearing? Why are you wearing that? Who you think you are? Stop trying to be 21. Stop trying to be. And it's that bringing that kind of narrative or that kind of approach lets you understand different people. So you should be able to communicate with kids, with teenagers, and you see a light on people's face when you're talking to them about an area that they have an interest in. So, I can give you a couple of examples of recent sort of sustainability graduates, or not even sustainability, they were design graduates, or they weren't even graduates, they were interested in graphic design. Huge role to play in this sector, and they didn't even know it, because this sector, or the sustainability sector, the biggest problem for it for many years has been the comms problem around it. Yeah. People don't know how to communicate the topic of sustainability, because to a lot of the general public, sustainability means it's an addition to their energy bills, or it's addition to their impacting on their back pocket because it's costing them more through taxation or other sort of areas. Yes, probably true. But then it's the cost of doing it versus the cost of not doing it, which if you add up the wider benefit of sustainability and net zero, so better healthcare, better all of the above, a better air quality, there's areas I think it's, if you put this down to people's homes, I'll give, people very precious of their home life, aren't they? So if you imagine someone trying to sell their house, there's a for sale sign outside their house, and out on that board, it was legal to say, or they had to have there was a legal implication that says they have to say that the air quality outside their house is illegal. Yeah. Do you want your kids playing there? You don't, do you? It's almost like, it's almost having that mindset of, if you live in that area, you may as well smoke 60 cigarettes a day. That's how bad the air quality is. That's then going to plummet their house prices. All of a sudden, they're going to become interested in becoming sustainable. So that's a bit extreme, and I don't think that's ever going to happen. But there's getting the messaging right is key. How do you portray the difference between green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, pink hydrogen, grey hydrogen, brown hydrogen? Yeah. There's multiple different colours of hydrogen. Ultimately, everyone wants green hydrogen, which is the academic strength we've got in this region, because our new partnership is about ourselves working with the University of Manchester, working with National Physical Laboratories to bring in all of the expertise that we need to deliver green hydrogen at scale. And but the messaging behind that is, not everyone understands the differences in colour of hydrogen. Not everyone understands that only 1% of global hydrogen production is green today. But that's okay as well, because there's a $500 billion pipeline underpinning the investment in it. And that's set to grow by 2050 to around $1.4 trillion. That's not me saying it. That's just me picking up a paper for that. Deloitte have written around green hydrogen and recognizing that's the ambition. So is the topic going to change anywhere? No. Is this going to incentivize people to get a job in this sector? I should hope so, because you're going to get paid well. You're going to produce something in your work life that will make you feel good about yourself. Because even from recent graduate research, 90% of all graduates want to work for a company with good sustainability credentials. You can no longer and if anything, equally, there's almost like a movement of students that have been formed, whether it's through schools. I mean, at the Green Summit, the most powerful messaging I saw at the Green Summit was from children in primary school. What they were doing and what they were saying is powerful, rather than me or someone who's older than me or someone who's saying that to the same audience, because that resonates with people, because they're thinking, actually, this isn't about leaving the problem of sustainability net zero to those kids because they've got good ideas and they're going to be the future engineers of the future. We've got massive problems now, but this is a problem it's going to get worse in their lifetime. It's going to get worse in their kids' lifetime. So this is about ensuring that we can leave the best legacy we can. And that's probably why 12 years later, I'm still there, because I came in as a consultant, like I said, for 3 months, but that was 12 years ago. So the projects have kept me there, but I suppose falling in love with what I do and actually thinking that you want to pass on as much information to people. And there's no IP around information. You know, the information, when we've had chats, we talk, and that's the best thing. You tell someone wants to come in and ask you a question. What is net zero? What is sustainability? What is hydrogen? What are the different colors of hydrogen? Is there an opportunity for my business? And well, yeah, that's just a conversation. There's no IP in that. Then we talk about the skills agenda. Skills is something that should be developed by everyone, but not owned by anyone. That's my, and I think that should be everyone's view, because yes, you want to retain talent, but if you're not helping to develop the huge pipeline of talent that this sector requires, you know, you can talk about this from a corporate world. There's a big reason why all of those companies have come together and suggested that we create a net zero skills charter, because their shared goal is we need to recruit people in multiple areas to deliver net zero. And it's every single function. Hydrogen is in there, of course it is, but it's just one vector. Now, is hydrogen the only solution? No, it's not. It's understanding that everything is a whole systems approach. So even if your core job function is something else, then you need to be able to understand other areas which are not aligned to your expertise. You know, I've had to learn, you know, from academics about chemistry, about physics, all of the things that I generally wouldn't have talked about in my 12 years previous to coming here, because I have to explain that in layman's terms to the politicians, to the investors, who then will make a decision on whether we want to fund projects or not. And that's kind of the area that we've skated over, haven't we? So this is boils back down to investment in people, investment in time, investment in R&D.
Amer,
Go on.
go on now. I
No,
was
you
going
go,
to ask Amer. I was going through with your bio and whatnot. So one of your missions is to make Greater Manchester a centre of excellence in hydrogen and fuel cells. But part of this, you set up the program high schools. Could you take us through the work that you've done with high schools?
Yeah. So again, it boiled back down to the funding. So we had to find, there was no point in setting up a £4 million R&D facility unless you started thinking about skills at the same time. So at the same time, we applied for British Council funding through the Erasmus Plus program. We're awarded funding to build a transnational partnership. So I found partners in France, Italy, Belgium, Romania, Greece. Those were the core countries we found the partnership in. And those were either academic institutions or they were companies involved in the hydrogen fuel cell supply chain. Yeah. What we basically then worked out is, how do you teach a 13, what was our sort of target range? So anything lower than 13, it gets too complicated. And how do you teach a primary school child about hydrogen? I don't think it's really required. I think there is a way now, but I think we should do that through comics and things like that. But so this had to be about understanding the curriculum, and the curriculum is very difficult to change. So this had to be extracurricular. So we had to pull together a set of resources that not only the students who were 13 through to 18 found it fun and engaging, but equally, you were then teaching teachers how to teach about this area. Now, when hydrogen was taught, and when I looked at this, it was taught as an exam question in physics or chemistry, and that was it. Wasn't really anything else. And it was an area that was touted as potentially being involved in sustainability, but there was lack of green hydrogen globally. So, and hydrogen's always been that vector that's 10 years away, it's 10 years away, it's 10 years away. It's now not 10 years away because it's happening in reality because of the policy and investment around it. The resources, we then had to sort of work, understand how teachers already taught. So we did a survey, not just a survey, but we had the involvement of about 600 teachers from those different countries involved through multiple questionnaires, multiple sort of interviews, how they taught and where would they see value in a program like this? And then we went to choosing our topics. So we have 11 different areas that high schools covers: applications, history, storage, all of the sort of areas that are becoming commercial, to allow them to sort of learn about. And then there was an element of, I wouldn't say gamification, but there was an element of producing games that were an expertise of one of the French universities was around pedagogy. And they brought their expertise in around producing a game that allowed the teachers to engage their students in a hydrogen game. Then it's about pulling together resources, because each country has different sets of resources. So if you take our partners in Romania, they didn't have, and they were a government agency, they didn't have funding to deliver or go and buy kits. So we've got these educational kits that we use when we bring in schools. But the high schools had to be developed in such a way that it could be taught and learned by anyone with an internet connection. So that's why it's open access, it's free for all, everything is available online. And if anyone wants to copy it, they can do. So the recent example, I'll give you that. So the legacy of that program is we had visits from a region in Poland. So it's a local government region called Poznan. And we worked with their team, and they said, well, we want to use the high school's resources in Poland, and they're already translated into those different languages, but they wanted to translate them into Polish. So we just gave them all the resources. They translated all of the resources into Polish. That's now being shared with schools in Poland. So if you go, and that's now another sort of project. And again, that's what we're saying. The majority of countries that we speak to said they want to deliver a lot of their taught curriculum is taught in English, but not everyone wants to learn it in English, and not everyone. So if there's an opportunity to then sort of create a legacy behind it, say, give that to, so whenever I have meetings with multiple countries or multiple areas, I say, look, this is a set of resources that we developed. If you want to use them, they're there online.
Yeah.
They're free. And if you want to go one step further and have them translated, we'll just give you the resources.
And what was the response to some of the young people that were on the program as well? What was the feedback they got from them?
I think they suddenly get enthused by hydrogen more and more because they're hearing it more in the media. So when Formula One, for example, this is you guys announced that the future of Formula One might be heading towards hydrogen, or when they watch a film and hydrogen's mentioned. In fact, in a lot of ways, films always represented hydrogen. I think there was a James Bond film. This is a really bad example, but James Bond crashed into a hotel which was powered by hydrogen fuel cells. As a big explosion. That's not going to happen. But that's the whole thing about the social side of it, which we haven't even got to yet. We need to get over that. Is getting them enthused in, and that's why we brought those experts together, because this was about developing games and doing extracurricular activities that would help them understand hydrogen, but equally help their ambitions around working in sustainability in general. Yeah. And I think teachers were looking for resources like this anyway. They just didn't know where to go. What this does is brings it all together. So these resources are, again, were even shared centrally through the European Commission. And that's brilliant, because anyone can just go there and learn it. And when we had the teachers who were kind of showing how they've tried to influence the curriculum. And I think a big part of what we then decided to is we recruited an ex-school teacher to help us with that ambition, because it's all good and well having the idea, but then you need someone who has the mindset of a teacher. I could never be a teacher. I don't think I have. And I think I'm quite patient, but I don't think I could ever be a teacher. So you need someone to be able to understand how to teach kids of that age. And it's different, ranges of age, and it's different ways. I think the challenging part of that was, how do you infuse a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, where here in the UK through to one of the other partner countries where the curriculum is completely different. So we had to design something that was quite sort of centralized, and something that would appeal to multiple cultures and multiple different people. And it works. It works well. They're used by thousands of students and thousands of teachers on a yearly basis now.
So Amer, you've spoken a lot of gems, a lot of nuggets that I've picked up today, and a lot of interesting things that I wasn't aware of before. I know, and I'm thinking from anyone who's listening to this who is maybe runs their own business or is thinking about setting up their own business, and they've heard a lot about hydrogen, but they don't know too much about it or about fuel cells.
Yeah.
Could you explain what are some of the advantages of using, say, hydrogen or hydrogen fuel cell over other energy storages like batteries or ICEs?
Okay, so we'll split this into two areas. So the area where I think hydrogen is going to make the most difference is, from a transport term, is heavy goods vehicles. Now, a 50 kilowatt. So if you're talking about sizing a fuel cell accordingly, it makes more sense when you're pulling things of scale. So what you need, and a lot of the component parts for a electric vehicle and a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle are the same. It still has a small battery inside. What displaces the large, heavy battery? So you imagine a 50 kilowatt battery under a truck. So a battery in a refuse truck weighs on average about 15 tons. A fuel cell, which is of the similar size, I can hold in one hand. About this, and I'm, these guns can't hold 50 tons. I'll tell you that now. So then I would need a tank at the back of that truck, which would be sized accordingly, and that would have to contain kilograms of hydrogen. And then through that electrochemistry that happens between the fuel cell and the hydrogen supply, it creates electricity which drives that vehicle forward. Exactly the same. So when you're driving a hydrogen fuel cell car and an electric car or a truck, it feels exactly the same. Now, the difference is, once my hydrogen runs out, I can instantly refuel that in the same amount of time it takes me to refuel a petrol or diesel vehicle. The challenge of it right now is we need to bring down the cost of the hydrogen per kilogram. And that's what these incentives in the US are example for it. They're all doing one thing. All the subsidy across the world is trying to deliver one thing around hydrogen, and that is bring hydrogen to about $2 or £2 per kilogram. At the moment, it's about 12 or 13. Now, that's from a transport term. From an industrial energy term, this is about, and this is why hydrogen features in the energy security strategy. We can generate a lot more hydrogen locally. If we've got the renewables or the offshore wind in the electrical grid, we don't have to be reliant on gas. And gas is bad. So if you take then where its uses lie, it's in heat networks, it's in big pipelines to deliver industrial level decarbonization to the hard to abate areas, steel manufacturing, cement manufacturing, oil refineries, all of those big heavy manufacturing businesses that are very reliant upon gas, which is bad. It could be displaced with hydrogen. But those businesses, you would need a stable and regular supply of hydrogen, and B, you probably need a big pipeline like HyNet as an example. So HyNet is a 0.9 billion pound hydrogen pipeline that will deliver industrial level decarbonization to 10 major industrial businesses. That's where hydrogen role best fits. But then you've got multiple different opportunities being created for fuel cell, like passenger vehicles, if you want to have that instant refueling capability. Now, with an electric vehicle, you will always have some downtime. Even with the fastest charger, it's going to take 13 minutes to fully charge your vehicle. And it's still, we're saying we have to have green hydrogen in the same mind. I'm going to say you need green electricity to charge these vehicles. There is no point, but there is a point actually. When I'm driving my electric car in a city centre environment, there's no emissions. What if the electricity that I've used to charge that car has come from coal? I'm not really solving the challenge then, am I? So that's the well-to-wheel argument. It applies to electric vehicles and it applies to hydrogen fuel vehicles. They're the same family. So how petrol and diesel have always lived together, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and electric vehicles will live in the same fashion, because trucks, buses lend themselves sometimes better to hydrogen whereas passenger vehicles are perfectly suitable to EVs, unless you want that instant refueling capability. Then I'd say the other area is looking at possible areas, and I don't think this is going to happen anytime soon. Hydrogen's role in domestic heat. Now, hydrogen boilers exist. There's no gas in the network. Now, the National Infrastructure Commission produced its report recently and said, actually, hydrogen's role in domestic properties is totally unsuitable. And where the best solution to decarbonize that today is heat pumps. But again, that's fraught with challenges. So there's still up and downward sort of trajectories in that policy area. But in order to get involved in the supply chain, you're going to need people who can build pipelines, people can develop tanks. The makeup of a hydrogen tank is completely different to a conventional tank. You're talking about Kevlar, carbon fiber reinforcement, so the hydrogen can't escape, hydrogen cylinders. We're talking about compressed gases, hydrogen for aviation. The future of aviation is heading towards hydrogen. So there's multiple sectors that are going to benefit from hydrogen.
But there has to be that incentivization. And you mentioned it, but you mentioned it before about Japan has pumped 107 billion into their hydrogen supply chain. America are pumping billions. The Middle East are, but the UK isn't doing any.
It isn't to that scale. It is.
It's not to that scale.
No, so there is a dedicated strategy, but what is being designed right now is the ambition of a national hydrogen program. Now, there will be funding and there is funding now. So if you take the Trafford project I mentioned before, that's secured funding from the Department of Net Zero Security to fund under the hydrogen business model, to fund the price difference in hydrogen than the price of gas. So that's how a lot of organizations are agreeing people to take their hydrogen, because you're selling it to them at the same price they're paying for gas. Incentives will work in different ways, because you will need funding to fund R&D facilities. What the UK needs massively, and this is a way to do it in my world, from an R&D perspective, we're now starting to see investments in gigafactories for batteries, aren't we? And one of the things that pump primed that market was the Faraday Battery Challenge. You almost need an equivalent for hydrogen fuel cells. You need a Faraday Battery Challenge type equivalent. And that's an ambition that I'm trying to develop out with our partners for what we can build on and what looks like success for our Innovation Accelerator. The Innovation Accelerator is about creating this electrochemical hydrogen cluster in Greater Manchester and bringing in expertise from all over the UK. The next succession plan is, could we, Manchester, be a place where a national hydrogen centre is created? But it will not be in a city centre, because you're talking about a 40, 50,000 square foot facility, which provides complete open access for those companies that currently are involved in the supply chain, but they have to go abroad for their testing capacity. That's what the Faraday Battery Challenge, and then you will see investments in gigafactories, and we will almost probably need an industrial strategy specifically for fuel cell electric vehicles, and industrial strategy for, where hydrogen's role is best suited to. But I think we're getting there, or we're definitely heading in the right direction. It's just, that's what I'm saying. Each of those 52 roadmaps have different ambitions and different funding. But even with those, if I take India, take Japan, and take the US, these have been announced. The challenge is for a lot of the businesses there and here is they want to find what their place in that supply chain looks like. So you have to really break that $107 billion up and say, let's look at, out of that $107 billion, what is the commitment to device level electrochemistry, so green hydrogen sort of projects? What's the commitment to pipeline type projects? What's the commitment to, and then you'll find your place. There is something for everyone in and around hydrogen. So even take a business that is involved in petrol and diesel vehicles. I mean, you guys, you've raced petrol go-karts. Imagine a company that sells to an OEM that makes trucks. All of a sudden, that truck manufacturer says, I want to go into the hydrogen world. Well, unless that business changes its portfolio or expands its portfolio to start developing hydrogen tanks, they're going to lose their contract. So it's that piece, and it's it's a big information exercise that everyone needs to sort of pull together, saying what strengths do we have? So what does that, the types of businesses that we support, as an example, they're not fuel cell, technically all fuel cell companies are all electrolyzer companies. They're companies that make components, they make materials, they make component parts. And I think, is there an opportunity for new companies to be formed? Absolutely. But it's understanding when they hit go, because that program is currently being designed and there is funding available, but there's funding. You need to start looking at this with an international lens. We've got our own challenges to solve.
Yeah.
We've got to deliver 10 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen in the UK by 2030. 5 gigawatts of that has to be green. That's only 6 years away. So you need more companies, more people, everything we've talked about for the last hour.
Amer, I wanted to ask, as your experience as the director of Manchester Fuel Cell, the Manchester Fuel Cell Innovation Centre, what would you say is the most exciting or innovative project that you've worked on over the last year?
You know what? There's multiple R&D projects that I think, that sounds like a great project. The one that probably excites me is absolutely nothing to do with R&D. It's the skills piece. And I think it's that working on net zero skills and informing people what net zero skills is. I think it's made my mindset shift to say, start with skills. That should be a top priority.
Yeah.
Because then that defines your R&D projects. And in terms of sort of the types of projects we're talking about, I'd say the Innovation Accelerator is my sort of exciting one at the moment, because the opportunity, it's very hard to innovate within 24 months, especially in a sector like this.
Yeah.
Or 23 months, or as time progresses, by the time things are signed. What is the most exciting thing is what succession looks like. So I'm almost looking at 5 years down the line or 2 years down the line when this accelerator finishes. This shouldn't just be another accelerator that gets funding and then we stop. We've got to sort of create that assurance that although there's a national program in development by government, we're almost designing our own. So we're not actually waiting for that. We're almost saying, look at what we've done over the last 10 years. Look at pulling together what the opportunity for hydrogen across Greater Manchester looks like, and then selling that vision to the world to say, you're interested in developing or deploying your tech. This is the vision that's going to help it happen. You're interested in working in this space. This is the vision that's going to help it happen. Or you're interested in developing your technology. We've got a plan for life after our innovation accelerator, because the whole point in that accelerator is a pilot. We have to prove to everyone, to ourselves, to the rest of the UK, to the world, why we were the right place to be chosen as a pilot for this innovation accelerator, and why hydrogen was a good idea.
Absolutely.
So Amer, for a young person listening to this podcast who's thinking, do you know what? I'm really, really interested in hydrogen, but I would love to rise up the ranks and become a director of an innovation center. What would you say are the 3 core skills that are required to do a job like yours?
Number 1, people skills. Number 2, never be afraid of speaking your mind, and number 3, just broaden your interest and understanding of what sustainability is and what net zero is, and you'll find your place. And whether it's an R&D center you want to lead, or you want to be a consultant, or you want to be a graphic designer or a race car driver, or anything, those things, the top 2 are something that I'd say has probably nothing to do with my professional sort of skills. That's just something I suppose it's just something that I was taught, and you try and have a voice, so you try and develop your people skills, because it's that same old ideology, isn't it? People, if people don't like you, they won't work with you. You have to be able to communicate to different audiences all the time. And from the first time I spoke, don't get me wrong, the first time I had a speaking slot many, many years ago, I was nervous. I was, shaking, all of that. That still happened even, 10 years later. It still happened wasn't shaking all the time. Now you could put me in an audience, and you're exactly the same. We can go into an audience because you've learned that to feel assured of what you're saying is what people want to hear, because the style of teaching people isn't just, I could sit here and deliver a presentation and just talk from the screen. My biggest bugbear is people who do that. I can just say, look at a set of slides and all you're doing is reading the slides. That's not what people are there to do. They're less looking at the screen. They're more looking at you and how you deliver the message you want to deliver. So have less slides as possible. But that interest in sustainability in net zero, I'd say if you have an interest, look and see who you want to have a conversation with, because I would say the benefit of being in somewhere like Manchester, there isn't many people that turn you away to have a conversation. That yes, it's challenging in many ways, but people generally will speak to you. I mean, that's how we got talking, and we've gone off on tangent on multiple different areas. I sat with Blair when we were on speaking at the same conference, and we were just, there's a level of what you deliver at the conference, and then there's just a random conversation that you have that leads to another conversation. We had the same when we were at the Labour Party thing. Business. So we just, it's that narrative, isn't it? Bring a bit of humour and less seriousness to this agenda. People think it's dead serious, and we need to stop having those sector specific. Should we be having a green skills conference, or should it just be a skills conference to say that every single skill is going to be green, or should we be talking about sustainability and have its own special place? It should be sustainability in an ideal world. We're not there yet. And I think for someone looking at a career in sustainability, for years, they've not had a direction to really go at, because it's, for the people who are in it now, fall into it by accident, or unless you were actively involved in an area, which is STEM based, that piqued your interest. Whereas I think it's easier to get into sustainability now because there's a lot more focus on the sector. There's the ambition of delivering net zero. And I think I'd say my strongest recommendation to people is understand what net zero is and what sustainability is. And I guarantee you will find that it's such an exciting place to be.
Excellent. So what I've got for that, interest in sustainability, net zero, people skills, and what was the final one?
Never be afraid to speak your mind.
Never be afraid to speak your mind. Love that. Love that. So, Amer, we're going on to the bonus part of the podcast, where I'm going to ask you 3 questions, 3 fun questions, but one of them I do judge you on. And we're going to start with that first question. So please, Blair, do the honors. Drum roll, please. Right, Amer, here you go. No pressure. Does pineapple belong on a pizza?
No.
He's passed the question.
Great, you passed.
No.
Flying colours.
Never.
It's
just wrong.
Easiest one of
it's just wrong,
isn't it?
It's just wrong.
It's just wrong. I think we've had about. I think this might be the 26. I think this must be 26 podcast. We've had about 7 people say pineapple belongs on a pizza.
No.
I've thrown them out the room.
Definitely
the podcast. So no, great stuff. Now this is an interesting one I'd like to ask guests. So tonight you're going home, you're gonna throw a dinner party. You can invite 3 guests, either dead or alive. Which 3 guests are you inviting?
All right, this is probably my first 2 guests would always be the same first 2 guests. They're my 2 sons. I'd always invite them. They're like, they're like legends to me. And then the third one, I'd have to say their mum, but obviously I'm not choosing their mum because she might hear this and she'll kill me. I'd say, who would I actually really want to have? I'd say Elon Musk. And do you know why?
Elon Musk.
The only reason why, because I think he is obviously clearly he's
anti-hydrogen,
one of the most intelligent men. That he's very, very intelligent, but he's mad as hell. Okay. So just to get that mind to have a 15-minute conversation with someone who is, it's less about him probably being the richest man in the world. I'm just thinking I think he's mad, but I think he's clearly got some brilliant ideas. But I just want to know what makes him so mad. That's probably it. But I'd say the first two are definitely my sons.
I'd be interested to see what the debate would be like because he's so anti-hydrogen and
I know.
pro EV. So
And that's
I
the
imagine
debate I probably want to
your
have.
sons would just be looking like firing back and forth debate.
Yeah. But again, I learn something of them all the time. It's the fact that it's a new way of doing things in whether it's tech terms. And I think, when you start thinking about how tech or sustainability, you imagine the driving test, in future years, the driving test won't be done. The manual driving test is going to be obsolete because no cars will be manual. And there's, I wouldn't even call them cars. To me, cars were proper. This is really showing my age. You could smell petrol and like all of that. Whereas new cars, it's about push of a button and press D and you're off. It's like a PlayStation on wheels. That's the best way to describe it.
I love that. Your sons are teaching you. You're teaching them. They're teaching you new things.
Or listen to their music. Or what you listen to that for? I had this. Or if I listen to something that they've introduced to me, why are you trying to be young? I was like, well, it's music. I listen to music.
Love it. So, and then the final question, Amer. If you could have any superpower, what would you have and why?
Honest to God, the best superpower I could have, is stop the war in the world. That's because we're sat here talking about future generations where there's, wars, the horrible thing that's, look at the state of the world. It's horrible. Is that to see children in that much pain and thinking? I'd say if I could one wish, or it's a superpower, it's to stop the war in the world.
Yeah, world peace. World peace. Yeah, should be a dream of everybody in this planet. Just to stop wars. No one.
We're trying to save the planet, but we're killing it at the same time. So there's.
It's very true. It's very true. Yeah. If only there was a magic button where you could just stop
exactly.
that.
Yeah. But again, most of these wars, but they're about money, aren't they? Everyone wants there's
true.
Anyway,
well, that is definitely for another podcast. Because
that is another podcast.
I could go on a tangent about that, and it'll be another hour of the podcast. But Amer, thank you so much for being the guest on the See Me Be Me podcast. This has been an excellent episode. And for anyone who's listening to this now, Amer, and they wanted to, maybe get in touch with you, or what are some of the best social platforms for people to reach out to you?
LinkedIn.
It's time for you to plug yourself.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I am on Instagram, but again, that's another thing that my kids take the mick out of me for, saying, "Why are you on Instagram? You're old and stuff." I was like, "I want to be on Instagram. I'll be on Instagram." So professionally, LinkedIn or Twitter, or as it's now known as X, you can find me. I'm not hard to find.
Spoken like someone on a hitman's checklist. Not hard to find. Come find.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, thank you. Honestly, I appreciate both of your times, and I'm sure next time we see each other, it'll just be another fun conversation as we always have. So, thank you.
Definitely. And you know what? There's so much more I want to ask you. So we will definitely have to get you on a future episode of the podcast, and even speak about some more of the crazy and exciting projects going on in the fuel cell center.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on, Amer.
No worries. Thank you very much, both of you. Take care.
Take care, Amer.
Bye.
Blair.
Niall.
So, Amer Gaffar, what did you think of our guest on today's episode of the podcast?
No, it was very interesting. I mean, one of the first takeaways is what he was saying. I mean, he's been in this industry for 23 years, but it's almost like it's like he was saying he never really meant to go into a career within sustainability. It's almost, you're saying it's almost something by chance that he went into this area. And because you mentioned he wasn't really from, let's say, not like academic, was it like an academic background, was he? It was more, it's one of his main skills is that he likes like speaking to people. I like that's almost like how we met, that Amer ourselves are just from like networking events, and we just built a relationship from there. And he's just taken that his skills, just networking and speaking with people, and just made it, and then just went down this path with it in terms of the sustainability route. And fair play to Amer and where he is with his career now, and being a director of a £4 million innovation centre. So he's doing a massive trailblazer in that area. And again, he's one of the only people from a BAME background who's currently excelling in this sort of area. And also what he was mentioning as well is his 3 core skills. So it's not just, it's like his interpersonal skills, and it's also not having that fear of failure. I just find that really inspiring. And we've had that with a lot of our guests, that you just have to put yourself out there and basically not be afraid to, take risks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you excel in these sorts of careers. And I believe his 3rd skill was have almost like a ground in net zero, and always be willing to pick up more and more information about in areas of sustainability and net zero, because there's always that information you can pick up. And this is still relatively a new concept as well with net zero. So there's always information you can pick up. What about yourself now?
Yeah, so no, it was really insightful. I definitely learned a lot on the podcast, and it's great to hear about how the Fuel Cell Innovation Centre came to be. It was an 18-month journey from getting the proposal awarded to them, so awarded of the funding to actually the facility being built. It's opened in 2018. And a bit more information about the benefits of hydrogen. Obviously, we're working with hydrogen, but we'll talk about the strategies that they've created in Greater Manchester, and how that has led to a national strategy in the UK. Talking about some of the stuff like the Net Zero Skills Charter, and how one of the core emphasis around Amer's work is not just about the research and development and the technologies being used in hydrogen within the fuel centre, but a core thing is around skills, and that we need to develop people to work within the hydrogen supply chain, which is going to be a huge growth sector. The whole net zero sector is going to be huge, and it was about saying that there will be lots of new jobs created, which are going to pay a lot of money, but it's about saying current jobs now, people working in the current environment, how can we switch them into a green career? So let's say if you're working in sustainability, working in finance, you could do green finance, which is the same work that you're doing, but you're doing accounting for within the whole net zero piece. And we had a chat about what other countries are doing to invest in their hydrogen supply chain. So Japan are about to put in 107 billion into their own hydrogen economy. The US is pumping in billions into hydrogen, and the UK is doing a bit, but it's nowhere near those other 2 countries. But yeah, how the government's agenda, we need to do a lot more in terms of net zero. And Greater Manchester is one of the only city regions with its own hydrogen strategy. It's got its own purpose-built hydrogen R&D centre. One of the only ones in the country, and wants to create some very we want to create some very big businesses here in Manchester who predominantly working around net zero technologies and hydrogen. But it's like, what is the level of support that they need and require? And this is all going to be it takes ambitious organizations to make that vision come to reality.
And he did mention Amer, that he's one of the main focuses that he wants to do with Greater Manchester is essentially make it the hub for net zero, make Manchester the hub for net zero, and then almost use the example of Manchester to branch net zero out in the world, like you were mentioning with Japan and whatnot. And also one of his side projects as well being the what he calls the high school, but it's not obviously high, it's high high school with HY instead of HIGH. So what I found interesting with that project specifically is you're saying he was working in different countries such as like Romania and Greece, and how he was basically, because what was interesting to me is Amer was saying, like, it's hard to teach like young people about skills within hydrogen, because people, let's say from under the age of 13, might find hydrogen not quite as interactive, and it's really hard to teach hydrogen to young people. And it's just the engagement of getting young people from the age of 13 onwards engaged in hydrogen, show them the opportunity that's out there. And even just the teachers, because I believe you were saying you're working with as many as 600 teachers in this project, and it's just finding ways in which you can, it's almost train these teachers into this concept, and then make it as fun as and engaging with these young people as much. So you're basically building that new talent pipeline that's of these different skills coming into the future. So it's really interesting to hear Amer's story, and it'd be great to have him back on the podcast sometime in the future.
Most definitely. And then the last aspect is, in terms of the skills piece, we should be asking businesses, we should be bringing businesses to the conversation and asking them, what skills are required, what skills are you looking for, and maybe we can help with training. So that's one of the things that we're doing with our project, our Innovation Greater Manchester project, is developing a hydrogen edtech platform using augmented reality, so you can learn those skills virtually before you go off and apply them in the real world. So, saying to businesses who are already involved in that net zero space, is that what are the core skills that you're looking for, and how can we help you to develop that next generation of next talent pipeline? So we should be involving businesses in all aspects of that. And you know what? Again, great episode of the podcast, and we'll have to invite Amer on definitely on a future episode to talk more about some of the stuff in depth, about some stuff we spoke about today. But that's all we've got time for. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Blair Project on all of our social channels, and make sure to share this podcast with people that you may know, because it was a great episode. So if you'd like to follow us on social media, we are on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at The Blair Project, and we're on Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly known as Twitter, at Get Me Motoring. So my name's been Nile Henry.
And my name is Blair Henry.
And we'll catch you later.
See you later, guys.
If you've liked today's episode, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The Blair Project is on all major social media platforms, including Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube at The Blair Project. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Yes, we are on TikTok at Get Me Motoring. If you'd like to follow myself individually, I am on Instagram at Nile Henry, and also LinkedIn at Nile Henry as well.
And if you want to follow myself, I'm on Instagram as BlairHenry_97, and also on LinkedIn as just Blair Henry.
So we look forward to having you on the next episode. So stay tuned. Take care.
Until next time.